A little late to the game, but we're going to review Ma. Let's do this. Ma stars Octavia Spencer, Juliette Lewis, and is directed by Tate Taylor. What is up, guys? It's been a couple weeks, I think, since I sat in this chair, but right now, as I'm recording this, I don't have a laptop, so I can't edit. So by the time I get to edit this recording, it's going to be a few days from now. But I can still do some recording, and we're going to talk about the movie Ma, which this one was looked really interesting to me, actually. It had that kind of gritty vibe that I guess Us did. You can compare those two movies, but this one was an interesting premise, and I always like premises that deal with psychotic characters.
How does it feel to be on the outside looking in? This is the most fun I've had in a long time.
You know, characters that really just go off the deep end. I mean, there's so many great examples out there too. Kathy Bates in Misery is always like the first that comes to mind for me. But this one touches on a lot of different like social tropes, especially like when it comes to bullying, just really being in high school in general, and how bullying can affect, you know, somebody's behavior. And the character Ma, or Sue Ann, as she's known by in this movie, is one of those, like that small percentage of characters that, you know, something bad happens to them when they're in high school, and then they end up going way off the deep end. And that's kind of what this is about. So, quick plot synopsis. You got this group of teenage kids, and they're looking to really just score some beer because they want to go party with each other. I did it, you did it, we all did it back when we were teenagers. Some of you might be teenagers, you might still do it. But along comes Sue Ann, and one of the teenagers, Maggie, she is enlisted to try to get Sue Ann to get the beer for them, which she does. And so I think this kind of sparks Ma's interest. And not to go into too many spoilers, but specifically the van that they're driving, that really sparks her interest. And so she goes in, gets the beer, and then she eventually coerces them to come back to her house and go to the basement. You know, it's a safe area for teenagers to go. They don't have to worry about cops. So it checks out, really. But once the layers are peeled back in the story, we start really getting a good character study of who Ma is as a character. And that is a really messed up woman. You know, she's still dealing with all these issues that she had as a teenager. She was taken advantage of. All these, the popular kids when she was a teenager, it's kind of like a revenge story on them. You know, and it doesn't start off that way. It just sparks into that. And I like that about this. It's kind of a gradual thing. I don't want to say it's a slow burn because the movie definitely keeps your interest all the way through. But they saved the meat of the movie, I think, until the last act. The last act really goes for broke. And it saved the movie for me, really. Because for me, this was like just standard thriller fare up until the last act. Once that last act gets going and Ma is like in full tilt mode, then it gets really interesting. Now, if I see some great acting in a movie, I gotta mention it. And I gotta say, Octavia Spencer as Sue Ann in this is excellent. You know, she is Ma. She's the leader of this thing, and she does such a great job carrying the movie. You know, she's always interesting, and she plays a lot of different sides to this character too. There's sometimes where she's going for a little bit sexy, and then there's other times where she just goes completely batshit crazy. And she handles both quite well. But to me, the big surprise in this movie that I don't hear anybody talking about is Juliette Lewis. Juliette Lewis, I remember watching her in Cape Fear when she's like sucking on Robert De Niro's finger. She's probably the age in that movie that her daughter is in this movie. She could have played this part as just a standard mother, as we've seen in a million of these types of movies, but she really took the part by the horns and really gave it her all. There's one scene specifically where she's getting on to her daughter Maggie, and she gets pretty damn pissed off at her, even, you know, even cursing at her. And to me, I thought that was so realistic because a lot of times in movies, if a character does that, we see it as like they're a bad parent, when they're not a bad parent. I think good parents, they raise their voice sometimes. And I thought that was a great representation of that. And also this explores like who people become as teenagers, because sometimes when they're teenagers, once they become adults, they learn from their mistakes and they become different people. And then you have the opposite end of that, like Luke Evans' character in this, where he pretty much stays the same asshole his whole life. And so that plays into this dinner that he has with Ma. and later in the movie, he plays a big part, actually. Now, as far as any cons for this movie, I kind of touched on it already in, you know, the first 2/3 of the movie. It's still really good, but there's a point in that first 2/3 where I'm like, this isn't going to be like the greatest movie. It's going to be okay. And it really is just that. It's just okay. But that last act really brings it up a notch and kicks it over into like the purchase-worthy territory, because up until then I was going to just give it like a straight-up humdrum. But I actually enjoyed this one quite a bit, so I'm going to give it a low purchase-worthy. So in the comments, let me know what you guys thought of Ma. Looking forward to hearing them. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day, and on Fridays we do Free Fall Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and Drumdum out.